Maren McKenna is the author of Big Chicken Reader Extract. Here a look at how antibiotics fueled the rise of chicken from occasional treat to everyday protein source, regardless of what it does to our health. She speaks to Lucky Rock. LR Before the 1940s, chickens were kept for egg laying and were rarely served at the dinner table. How did chicken become such a big industry? The chickens we eat now are not what chickens used to be like. A whole bunch of things happened, from bringing technology to hatching eggs so that hens didn't have to sit on eggs anymore, from changing the nutrition of chickens so they could survive over the winter, to changing the literal shape of chickens by crossbreeding them. To me, the most important thing that happened is that we fed them antibiotics routinely. I thought antibiotics were to treat sick humans. Why give them to chickens? It dates back to the late 1940s, the beginning of the antibiotic era. A biologist at one of the first antibiotic manufacturers discovered that if you give animals tiny doses that are far too small to cure an infection, they put weight on faster. Those tiny doses changed the mix of bacteria in the guts of chickens in such a way that it changed how they took nutrition from their food. A little while later it was discovered that slightly larger doses protected animals from infection. The first discovery leads to treating chickens as high-throughput proteins because you can move them through production faster. The second, preventative use, leads to cramming chickens together in tighter and tighter conditions because it makes it feasible to produce them in rapid and crowded quantities. So, it wasn't a good development for the chickens. Animal welfare standards declined. Once you change the rate at which they grow by dosing them, and once you keep them in conditions that they naturally could not have withstood, it suddenly makes it more feasible to keep the birds in solid-walled barns where they never see sunlight, to change their breeding such that they're insatiably hungry and can't stop eating, to change their shape so they have much more breast muscle. It turned out to be bad news for humans too, giving rise to deadly drug-resistant superbugs. How come the animal gets those routine doses in their feed and water? The antibiotics go into their gut where they are fed into the gut bacteria. The bacteria become resistant and survive. They can leave the animal when we let the gut contents get onto the meat during slaughter. Or they exit with manure, which can get into groundwater and storm runoff, or dust in the wind, or on the skin and clothes of farm workers. Those resistant bacteria move away from the farm and eventually contact people who have no connection and potentially cause a drug-resistant infection in them. How long have we known about this? By the 1950s and 1960s, there are outbreaks of drug-resistant foodborne illness, from drug-resistant bacteria of the type that is in animals' guts and cause illness when they get into humans' systems, like E. coli and Salmonella. Several enterprising epidemiologists trace that chain of evidence backward and keep finding that it traces back to farms. Those outbreaks get successively larger across the decades. Then why didn't we stop feeding animals antibiotics decades ago? The EU banned growth promoter use 11 years ago, and had introduced a partial ban in 1999. The UK government was the first to do something about this. There were some large outbreaks in the UK in the 1960s. The Swan Commission reports in 1969 that growth promoters are a health hazard and should be banned, and in 1971, Parliament approves the measure. It almost immediately gets undermined. Farmers continued to use the antibiotics, saying they were being used for prevention, not growth promotion. That happens time and time again. There's a measure attempting to control antibiotic use, then someone finds a way around it. Can we produce enough cheap antibiotic-free meat to feed the world? We have this idea that an antibiotic-free animal has to be a happy animal gambling on green hills. That is not necessarily the case. There are very large producers that are still raising birds in very large numbers, tens of thousands at a time, in very large barns. They are improving conditions in those. They've not only changed the diet, but they're allowing the birds to exercise, and they're cutting windows in the barn so they can have natural light. So, foregoing antibiotics led them to take other welfare measures. They are the proof that it is possible to still produce animals for protein in an industrial high-throughput manner, but relinquishing antibiotics. Do you eat chicken? I do. The book opens and ends with me stuffing my face with delicious antibiotic-free chicken. I wanted to make the point that I'm a meat eater because one of the easiest ways to dismiss a critique or investigation of the way we produce meat is to say, oh, this is some kind of disguised vegan agenda. Also, when we created the system of growing meat animals that we have, we elevated a bunch of values, efficiency, consistency and safety to some, and we completely forgot about flavor. To me, a chicken worth eating tastes like a chicken that had a life worth living, that got to move its legs, flap its wings, have some sunlight on its feathers. These things make a chicken have more texture because the muscles got used. When they get to vary their diets and not just have industrially produced soy and corn, you can taste that in the flesh too. Big Chicken by Maren McKenna, published by National Geographic on the 12th of September 2017. Available in the US wherever books are sold. Pluck the Truth About Chicken by Maren McKenna is published in the UK by Little, Brown and is now available in ebook at £14.99 and is published in trade format at £14.99 on the 1st of February 2018.